All right, guys, we are live. All right, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We are the Pocketbook Project. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to recruiting and training more women to run for office in New England on all the state, federal, and local levels. I have with me here our co-founders, Jennifer Nasser and Christina Bain. Jennifer is an attorney, political advisor, and former chairman of the Massachusetts Republican Party. She's served as executive director for Reflect Us, a nonpartisan coalition of the nation's leading women representation organizations. She's been a candidate. She ran for Boston City Council in 2019. She currently serves on the boards of Mass Inc., the board of the Esplanade Association, the advisory board of the UMass Women in Leadership Program, the National Board of Fair Vote, and as vice president of the Union Club of Boston Board of Governors. And I'm sure I missed a few because she's always joining a new board. Christina, she's made a public service of her career, from presidential campaign trail to the halls of Massachusetts State House. She's been working in politics and elections for over 2 decades and worked on numerous local, state, and national political campaigns. Her expertise ranged from coalition building, particularly in youth, to fundraising. Additionally, she's served in roles in Massachusetts state government. So I want to thank you all for joining. Today, we are going to talk about what it means to build a network, why it's important, and how it relates to running for office. Start with a little background. This past election cycle was so successful for women. We've elected 17 new Republican women to Congress. We're going to have at least 117 women in Congress this year. It was funny when I was looking up the stats, it was like 3 news articles in a row about how this election set a new record for women in Congress. And they were from the last 2 years, 2 years before, and the 2 years before that. So women are really starting to succeed in getting closer and closer to fair representation. We still have a lot of work to do, but it's going a long way. So I want to start with Jen. Wanted to get your thoughts of what does it mean to build a personal network? What's the purpose? And how can that relate to this past election cycle and why women were so successful?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's having your own network, and I had an interesting experiences, not just being in politics for nearly 3 decades, but also running for office. And so I got to see the power of firsthand of having a network. And so my network went beyond just the traditional work network, but I have 3 kids. And so it was soccer moms, it was, moms that were from the playground, it was moms from school, dads from school, parents that I had just known around the community for years. And so they viewed me as Jen, their friend, Jen, mom to my kids. They didn't view me as a partisan person. They just viewed me as a person. And so that's the first thing about having a network, is that your network looks at you for who you are and not who your opponent wants you to be viewed as, or the media portrays you. And so that's number one. But I also had done an interesting experiment back in 2010 while I was chair of the Mass GOP. And at the time, I set out every day and I did it the first day kind of not knowing what I was doing. And then after that, I did about a week of this little test that I wanted to see. So every day I would go and I would start making a list of how many people I spoke to in the first 2 hours of my day. I just didn't want to do it all day. I was busy. So in the first 2 hours of my day, I talked to the taxi cab driver. I talked to the people when I was getting my coffee. I talked to people at the dry cleaner. I talked to people at school when I was dropping my kids off. I mean, on and on and on and on. By the time my day even started, I had talked to anywhere between 30 and 50 people every single morning, just by saying hi, walking by, whatever. My husband at the time, I would say to him at night, how many people did you talk to today? And he would say none. And I'm like, that's impossible. couldn't have talked to none. Like, that's just not possible. Who talks to no people? He has a job. He had to talk to someone. I mean, other than people at work that I had to talk to about work stuff, I didn't talk to anyone. And I realized then what women have that is such a tremendous benefit to us when we're running for office is that we have a natural network. We are just natural networkers. We talk to everyone. We're interested in how someone's day is. We're leaving our kids off. We're driving our parents to doctor appointments. Wherever you are, whatever stage you're in, you are always, always building that network. And that is the support system that's going to help you get through a campaign.
Great. Thank you so much. Christina, you have an extensive background in coalition building and networking, which, I think intertwine a bit. What are some of the best practices for building a network, and where do you start?
Oh, sure. So I started in college, actually, with all the contacts that I have today. So I started in working on different campaigns and elections, and also working with different groups within my university. And then also starting being involved with the student press as well. So I started capturing all of these names from these different places pretty early on. And then by the time I actually served on the Massachusetts Republican State Committee and also when Jennifer was chair, I had this list already intact. And in Massachusetts, running for Republican State Committee is running for public office, because you appear on the state senatorial ballot during the presidential primary every presidential cycle. So there's funding that goes into these races. There's competition that goes into these races. So and you have to get signatures just like any other legislative candidate, federal candidate, et cetera, in Massachusetts to run for the Republican State Committee. Same on the Democratic side. So by the time I ran in 2000, I started running in 2003, ultimately to be elected in 2004, I already had a list in place from working with youth coalitions at that point. I had not gotten into fundraising at that point because I was actually a state employee, so I did not fundraise for political causes due to ethics issues. So I already had a list, and I had an email address that I actually inherited from a local committee in my town that became like my brand. So many now are a part of this listserv. I send out events and different things, related to different activities, to either running for office or just different events in the New England area. And so now I actually have thousands of people on this list that I started building essentially in the late 90s. And it's really exciting. So I communicate to them. And what's great is, it can take sometimes 2 to 3 hours to put together an email, which I know not everybody has that kind of time, but it doesn't have to be that lengthy. I just write a very robust update. What I get back is like this very loving, wonderful responses from people who just say, I'm very excited to hear from you. I'm very excited to hear about this event. So I think your coalitions, when appropriate, because data privacy laws have definitely changed since the 1990s when I started building this list, when appropriate, that you can still utilize the data that you collect, whether from, different campaigns that you work on, or whether you have your own campaign, as you keep building it, and it just grows and grows and grows. And there's so many talented people, and then they have their networks that are also attached to them as an individual. So it just multiplies and it grows. So that's what's really exciting.
Yeah, and is it a lot of work, or what do you have to do to keep that list maintained? I'd imagine, people moving,
Sure.
phone numbers and everything.
Sure, that's the biggest challenge, I would say. I think sometimes it helps to have an intern or someone who can volunteer with you, you can trust, who may be able to help you with the updating. I know now, since obviously, like I said, I started this in the late 90s, the mail service, online mail, things like MailChimp and these other things didn't exist back then. I still have my list function as it did back in the 1990s. I actually like the organic nature of it, but now, I do have to keep track of it more with people moving and people wanting to, you will have the unsubscribes, you will have people who, may get frustrated, or they're, for whatever reason, it just goes with the territory, and it just, you just let them go. But it is sometimes hard to keep up with it, which is why I do say, it's so worth it to keep up with it. I would recommend having an intern or a college student or someone who's interested in helping you maintain it.
Great. That sort of leads into my my next question, which is, should you build a network in order to run for office, or do you build your network while you run for office? And I think I'll pose that question to both of you. We'll start with Jen. I know you obviously have some experience since you ran for office.
Yeah, it's such a good question too, because, no one should ever be turned off from running because they don't know where to start, right? So I don't want to say you should have a network, but here's what I will tell all of you is that you have a natural network. You have a Christmas list, you have a holiday list, you have birthday lists, you have anything that you have, any type of list you have. You send birthday cards to friends on their birthdays, or you put together your kid's birthday party, or you have a list, a class list. You always have lists. And that's where your network comes from. And that's how you start to build it, because that's the organic part. Those are the people who know you and who like you and have a vested interest in you. They're also the people, when I talk about fundraising and development, I always say, go to that holiday list, because those people, if they get Christmas cards from you, if they get holiday cards from you, they will also donate to you, whether that's $25 or $1,000. They're going to donate to you. But that's your before you run list, right? Those are your colleagues that you work with, the other teachers in your school, to the other attorneys or the other doctors. Those are the people that you already know. When you're running for office, you're going to be fortunate enough to meet people from all walks of life that you never would have thought that you would have met. I was able to meet people from the housing projects around the city of Boston to CEOs of major companies in the city and heads of institutions. And that was another phenomenal experience, meeting people that I would have never had access to. So networking comes in all different forms. It's your natural organic one that you do have beforehand. So you don't need to worry about cultivating this big list of multi-million-dollar donors or, tons of activists. You already know those people. You know people, the people who want to help you. But then when you're running, you cultivate another list of people.
Christina, do you have anything different to add to that?
No, I think that's exactly it. I think it is a great question. It's an important question. And I think you really do have to do both. And, have the list before. And then again, as Jennifer had said, you're building this list as you continue to meet people, and you never know who you're going to meet when you run for office. Or even if you're working on a campaign, you have no idea who you're going to meet. So every single campaign that I've worked on, and then including my own, work on the Republican State Committee, and I actually ran for 3 cycles, there were people that I added, along the way, and different, again, coalitions of people, different types of people. I actually went from really working with youth and then more into this fundraising platform, but those were not necessarily the people I would meet on, the daily campaign trail or working on some of these other, races. So I think it's important to be as organized as you can be. I know it's really hard because, people are calling. I recently had a conversation with a candidate who ran this cycle, who said, how do you best capture all the names and the phone numbers? We were talking about a particular phone number for someone. And I said, actually, you know what you have to do as best as you can. The minute somebody calls you, save it in your contacts. And just because otherwise it gets lost in the, the millions of the received calls. it's something that I've tried to train myself to do. It's not all, you can't always do it because you could be driving, you could be in places that you just can't do it. But on average, if you can do that, I think that's the best way to really start to capture those names. So capture every time somebody calls you that, you want to save the emails, the same thing, put it into, a database, even if it's just in a starting Excel spreadsheet. You don't necessarily have, and you haven't invested in something like a MailChimp or Constant Contact or another service yet. Just doing that is going to save you time and energy, and you're already going to have the space when you do decide to run or utilize it for another means.
Yeah, that's great. So our mission obviously is to help recruit and train more women to run for office. How can we use our networks and our networks to recruit more women and to just get more women involved to run for office?
So I think, the best way is, again, these networks that you already have. I think that's a built-in network where you can, start to communicate that, you're seeking, these are open positions that are, open for, if you have open seats or you have places where, a race that's really key, really encourage women in particular to run. And women actually need to be asked more times than men to run. There's data that shows this. And, women we think of all the reasons why we can't do it instead of all the reasons why we can. And I think that hearing from, us or hearing from, people who've already run or people who've worked in politics to say, we really would love for you to run, or have you thought about running for this, I think is really helpful. And your list and your contacts that network can be part of that recruitment process for sure, because you could say, oh, wait, I ran into this really amazing person when I was campaigning, at this coffee shop, and she was wonderful and she had a great background, and and okay, where is that? So you go to your Excel spreadsheet or you go to your Constant Contact or you look up, the name, and then you can start to have a conversation with that person.
Yeah, that's exactly what Christina said is really what it's all about. So number one, women need to be asked about 10 times, whereas a man wakes up in the morning, brushes his hair, shaves, and looks in the mirror and says, I'm going to run for US Senate today. Women we don't think about that. We don't think that we can do it. We don't know how we can fundraise. We don't know who's going to take care of our elderly parents or our young kids or our siblings, or we've got school and we've got work and we've got, 100 things going on. So we need that affirmation and to have friends around us that say, you can do this. And I think you would be great to run for public office. And what I always say to people is basically what Christina said. And in my own race, I said this to my friends, just go through your own phone, go through your contacts, see who lives in the district. If it's a state race, that's a lot easier. If it's a local race, find who lives in your neighborhood, find who lives around you, find who lives in your district. Go through that, send a text. This is my friend. This is my friend Jen. She's running for city council. I think she's wonderful. I hope you go and vote for her. Let me know if you need to know your polling location, right? Because I don't know who they know. Generally if you're friends with someone, you generally know their friend group. But then I would have friends in other parts of the state that would say, or out of state, that would say, oh, I have someone that lives in Boston. And so just constantly communicating with friends and saying one of the biggest things that you could do is utilize your own network. And then you never know what you can get from that. I ended up getting some volunteers. I ended up getting donors. That's why having a network is such a crucial element to a campaign.
It's a great point. And, you mentioned how, women much more so than men have to worry about the people around them before they can worry about themselves. And I think that's an excellent point to why you need a network, because it takes a village. And when you're, at a debate, you need someone to watch your kids and things like that. So I think you made a really excellent point with that. I also want to bring up, in August, we joined WPLN, the Women's Public Leadership Network, as a state training partner. And that's an excellent network that we've been able to join. We weekly have Zooms like this with people like us all around the country. And it's such a good network to have because we all have friends in different states. And if, we have a friend in Ohio or New Mexico, we know who we can call up to help them. And so I just want to thank WPLN for all they've done as well for networking for us.
Absolutely. And, just to even build off of that, the other thing that's nice about having a partner like WPLN and knowing all the other groups around the country that are like Pocketbook Project is that you never feel alone, right? And that's the value of having a network, is that you always have someone to go to who understands how you're feeling. Because whether you're a candidate or you're just a daughter, a wife, an attorney, you're, whatever it is that you're doing in life, when your network is what gets you through every day, because there's someone else who understands what you're going through. And that's what we are able to get with WPLN.
It's an incredible network, and we learn so much from them. And I know that, we've both bounced off different experiences that we've had and information shared, and, even things like technology, or even how to, run these types of webinars, and, just everything. It's just such a great support network. And they're also doing, similar things and up against some of the same, either challenges and have the same type of inspiration. So it's great.
Well, thank you both so much for all this information. This was great. I just want to encourage anyone watching, if you want to run for office in New England, please reach out to us. We have some all the local races will be next year. I know everyone focused on the presidency and all of that, it's over, but I mean, really our school boards, our select boards of selectmen and women, that's really where you're going to see the differences made in your communities. And we want more women involved. So please reach out to us. You can go to our website, it's pocketbookproject.org. You can sign up to get alerts for trainings like this. We also do just one-on-one advisement, and really just here for anything you need. Please reach out to us. And thank you all so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.